It all started out as a normal but rainy camping trip for my wife and I to celebrate our anniversary. We decided to head up toward the Olympic National Forest and find a nice spot to park and set up camp on a forest road. Out of all the forest roads we've been on, this one had quite a few good sites available, and we didn't really have to go far to find a big flat spot. We had a lovely afternoon setting up camp, walking around with our dog, eating snacks we packed, and enjoying the view of the mountains through the trees. As evening got closer, it started sprinkling, which slowly turned into heavy rain for quite a few hours. While we hunkered down under our SUV's canopy, we managed to get a fire lit despite the heavy rain, and we cooked up a lovely dinner on the camp stove. It let up eventually, but we continued to get heavy showers through the night. The real story starts the next morning. Usual routine of lazing around in our mummy sleeping bags until we find the will to emerge into the chill morning air. We enjoy some quick coffee and oatmeal and start cleaning up around the camp. We load up our dog in the SUV to make packing up a little easier. My wife heads back into our tent while I decide to start organizing some things in and out of the trunk. My wife, out of the blue, says, "Hello?" I respond to her, wondering what's up. She says, "There is a naked man right there." I poked my head out below the tarp and see a fully buck-naked man with a beard standing about 3 feet from the front passenger door. Keep in mind we are just parked up on a forest gravel road. We saw a few vehicles parked along the 5 miles we drove in, but no obvious signs of people camping close to us. The moment my wife had acknowledged him, he covered his face and turned away from both of us. I retreated away from the car to get closer to my wife. We both tried talking to him. He did not respond to a single word we said. He just stood still and covered his face with his hands, alternating between standing and crouching. When I say naked, I mean he had nothing. He was also shivering quite badly, which just made it sad when he wouldn't acknowledge our attempts to give him a blanket. To be honest, I had to fight the urge to try to help him beyond tossing him some warmth and food. This was a complete stranger who hadn't spoken a single word to us, and I didn't want to possibly agitate someone that's going through something. This all went on for about an hour, during which we had called 911 twice to report this naked, helpless man to the rangers or anyone who could help and try to get some type of assurance that someone was on the way. We also kept trying to communicate with him and offer him help, but he was in his own world, standing in a puddle which had formed next to the car overnight. Our anniversary trip ended up being the day of April 20th, so this was the morning after. We're not sure if this guy was having a really bad trip or some kind of mental health crisis, but we just wanted him to have some help. The entire hour I had the thought in the back of my head that he could just flip on a dime and possibly go erratic or violent. We slowly packed up our stuff in the trunk as best we could with this man having his crisis just a few feet away. Thankfully, our dog was already in the back seat, and a passerby told us there were some rangers just a mile or so up the road, so we scooted out of there as soon as our stuff was packed, and the man had shuffled a few feet further from the car. We drove up the road and saw a ranger truck and told him the whole story. He said he just got the call and was headed that way. My wife and I joke around a little. At one point, we were calmly shoving our gear into the trunk, and the man had crouched down next to the puddle and tilted his head towards us. This was our first creepy experience in 7+ years of camping, and we will not forget it. I'm an only child and live with my mom and dad in a decently sized home. It's a little big for just the 3 of us, but my parents' running joke is that it was never their intention to have only one kid, They just never got around to having more anyway. I was 15 when this happened. It was a rainy Saturday night, sometime in May. I can't remember exactly when this happened, but I do remember that it was during one of the last weekends before summer started up. There's one last thing I have to mention. I have a lot of weird medical conditions that make my life difficult. I get frequent panic attacks, faint easily, and struggle breathing at times. I'm also one of those weird people who needs complete and total silence to fall asleep. Like even a small fan is enough to keep me awake. I've mostly learned how to deal with it, but sleepovers and vacations are still unbearable. People always tell me they love the sound of rain and that it helps them fall asleep, but it does the exact opposite. For me, it doesn't rain often where I'm from, but every now and then we get these insane downpours that keep me up all night. To be fair, it wasn't a full-on thunderstorm, but it was raining heavily enough to keep me up. No matter what I tried, I couldn't block out the sound of raindrops pattering against the roof. It was late sometime well after midnight when I faced the reality that I wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. So I got out of bed and thought about ways I could expend some energy. Eventually, I decided to go for a little walk in the rain. This wasn't the first time I had done that. Walking in the rain was actually something my parents encouraged me to do when I couldn't sleep. We live in a very safe residential area, and there's a huge public park that borders my house. So being out late isn't dangerous at all, plus the park is very well lit, which is another one of the reasons I've always felt so comfortable walking there. Late at night, I put on a rain jacket, quietly walked downstairs, and stepped outside without even bothering to bring an umbrella. I purposely didn't bring my phone because I knew myself well enough that a phone screen was only going to keep me up. It was oddly peaceful outside. I've always been one for nature, and seeing all the trees gently swaying in the wind with the raindrops screaming down their branches was exactly what I wanted. After about 20 minutes, I started to feel myself getting tired, which was a good thing. I turned around and started walking back towards my house, figuring I'd be able to fall asleep by the time I got back, as I was cutting through the park. I glanced toward the road and saw something strange. There was a long black object lying flat in the middle of the street. At first, I thought it was an oddly shaped garbage bag or something like that. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized what it was. It was a person just lying there in the middle of the street. They were face down, too, from the looks of it. I felt a sick feeling bubbling up in my stomach. The only thought bouncing around my brain was the likely possibility that they had been hit by a car and were injured. Or worse, there was no other logical reason why someone would be lying motionlessly in the street, especially while it was raining, as much as my gut told me to just keep my head down and continue walking. I felt like I had to do something. My parents raised me a certain way. If I see a person in need, I have to help them. So against my instincts, I started approaching the person in the street. As I got closer, I was able to make out what they were wearing: black pants and a dark plaid shirt. Definitely not the type of attire someone would wear during heavy rain, judging by the clothing. It was a man, but that's what I had already assumed. I'm not sure if it was the gravity of the situation or something else, but as I was walking toward the street, I realized for the first time that night how cold I was. Like the rain was lukewarm 1 second and ice cold the next. If that even makes any sense, as I was closing in on the road, a screech rang out from somewhere behind me. Instinct took over and I whipped my head around, adrenaline flooding my veins. It sounded like a howl, but slightly off, like a wounded animal. That's the only way I can describe it. A quick scan of the tree line revealed nothing. The sound must have come from deeper in the park, meaning there was no imminent danger. Still, the sheer strangeness of it all had my heart racing. I had never heard anything like it before, and the lack of an explanation was what triggered that feeling of pure fear. But that feeling was about to get 1,000 times worse, because when I turned back around and faced the street, that person wasn't lying down anymore. They were sitting perfectly upright, staring at me in that moment. Everything started fading, and my vision narrowed. The only thing keeping me from passing out, right there was the muffled sound of 1,000 raindrops pattering all around me before I could react. That person stood up and started sprinting towards me with a demonic smile on his face. And what's worse, he was holding what looked like a kitchen knife. Up until that moment, I didn't know what it meant to truly fear for your life. I snapped out of my haze and ran as fast as I could in the opposite direction. As soon as I started running, I heard him yell, "I'll kill you!" At the top of his lungs, the wet grass made it impossible to run at full speed. But my one saving grace was that whoever was chasing me would have to deal with the same thing. I didn't want to lead into my house, so I ran towards the trees, hoping I could lose him in the park. That's where the screech had just come from. I know, but I didn't have another choice. I didn't look back once. I just ran. Like my life depended on it, and considering how insanely cracked out that guy looked, I think my life actually did depend on it. I ran towards the densest part of the park, hoping I'd be able to hide in there before he caught up to me. I didn't even know if he was still chasing me, but I didn't care. Part of me felt like if I stopped running, the fear would catch up to me, and I'd pass out immediately. I made it into the woods, and right when I was about to throw up from exhaustion, I ducked behind a tree and tried to catch my breath. I looked behind me, and there was no one, or at least, no one I could see. The only thought on my mind at that point was how in the world I was going to get home. Safely, I didn't feel comfortable moving, so I just waited there. I must have waited at least 20 minutes before finally stepping out from behind that tree. I took the long way home around the back side of the park and through this other section that spit me out a few streets away from my house. No one followed me. I finally made it home and collapsed on my bed, drenched and basically traumatized. I never got an answer for anything that happened that night. That howl is honestly what confuses me the most. I have a hard time believing it was somehow related to the man that tried to attack me. But it's just too coincidental. I think what happened is that guy heard the screech too, looked up, saw me, and then did whatever he did. For whatever reason, as for his motivation, I have no idea. There's just crazy people out there. Maybe he was on drugs or something. I know it's not a real explanation, but I can't think of a better one. I still live in the same house today, and even though several years have gone by, it's hard not to think about this experience every so often. We have these ice cream guys that would ride on their motorcycles with the tubs of ice cream in another sidecar, and usually they would give out rides to kids to their homes as a way for their parents to buy them ice cream. Some are really nice, especially the ones that recognizes you and would give out a free bar sometimes. Once, I was waiting for my parents to pick me up from school when I was in year 4. The other kids went home because my parents just got back from work, and it was fucking raining because of the monsoon, and I lived at the East Coast at the time. The road was filled with rainwater, and pretty sure I got a cold from that day. No sane person would ride out their motorcycle in the middle of the rain that hard. Except for the ice cream guy. I noticed that this was a different ice cream guy than the one that always came during after school. So I thought that he was new, and I've seen him a couple of times around my neighborhood as well. He saw me, and motioned me to come closer and get on the sidecar so he could take me home. Even as a kid, I couldn't help feeling vibes from this guy BC. He's almost too friendly, and I didn't like that. I stayed in my spot under the roof, close to the guard, because that's what my parents taught me to. He keeps insisting for me to come with him, even though I already said that I was waiting for my parents. And then he did the unthinkable when he got out of his parasoled motorcycle and getting drenched just so he could approach me. Instantly, I dashed to the guardhouse, ignoring the heavy rain just so he stops following me. I told the guard that the ice cream guy was following me, and thankfully enough, the guard chased him out and threatened that he wouldn't be able to enter the school premise if he doesn't back off. Deflated, he left, and I never saw him at the school again. It's weird how desperate people can be to get someone to go with them at all costs. I was especially vulnerable because I was alone, thankfully got out in time.